funding properly unemployment or other kinds of benefits to people who have been hurt and held back by the pandemic. And so we're doing a lot of work in that area. And lastly, housing. The issue of affordable housing is a major problem for Vermont. And we have lots of people who, if not falling through the crack, are having difficulty finding a housing. And we're looking at how to make affordable housing more affordable and also more available. Thanks.
Brian Savage.
Morning, Representative Brian Savage. I represent Franklin 4, along with Representative Bob Norris, the towns of Swanton and Sheldon. This is, I've been reappointed to the House Transportation Committee. This is my third term on that committee. We've spent the first couple of weeks, as we always do, hearing and getting updates from the Agency of Transportation and all the various divisions and departments that make that up. We have worked on our budget adjustment. There was some just fairly minor adjustments to the budget as far as transportation is concerned. And amazingly, the transportation fund is not that bad of shape. Surprisingly. So there was really just some very minor adjustments that needed to be done through the budget that came from the governor's office. We got that out last week, and we're all anxious to hear the budget address of the governor, which is going to be tomorrow, and then we'll get to work on the fiscal year 22 budget as soon as we get the materials, which there was some discussion on how we're going to get that this year. The transportation budget, it comes in which becomes the bill, is in a 3-ring binder, probably 300 to 400 or more pages. It's not practical to have that over Zoom, so it's going to have to somehow get delivered to us in person, so it may take a week or so to get that, but the agency is certainly working on that, so we look forward to it.
Thank you. Mike McCarthy, please.
Thanks. I'm Mike McCarthy. I represent St. Albans City and the southern part of St. Albans Town in Franklin 3-1 with Representative Tooth. I am on a new committee, the House Government Operations Committee, and we got the first bill out of the House, H48, that gives some flexibility to towns and some funding to support a safe town meeting day election. So we hit the ground running there. We spent the last week or so talking about a variety of issues in various technical corrections, but I think the most interesting thing is that we've been diving into some of the work that we started last year around criminal justice reinvestment and reform, and funding for the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council that trains all law enforcement officers, and some changes that we're making there. So we're going to be talking about that and pensions and a whole lot more on government operations this year. So been very busy in committee. I also was elected to be the House Majority Whip. So I work with the Speaker and the Majority Leader and the rest of the House leadership team on the Democratic side to help set the agenda, and also on the Rules Committee with the all caucus, all House leadership rather, in the other parties to make sure that we can do our work well, especially in this wild Zoom legislative environment. So it has been a busy start to the session. I'm also anxious to start working on the next year's budget, and thankful that the Vermont economy is not doing nearly as badly as we had projected back in August, as both Senator Brock and Representative Savage discussed, and could throw a lot of questions about sort of the gaps that we still have, and the benefit that we've had from a lot of federal money. It's complicated, but the long and the short of it is that we're in much, much better shape than we had thought in the August economic forecast, now that we have a new economic forecast in January. So we're going to try to make sure that we spend that money wisely and invest it so that we have a Vermont economy that doesn't leave anybody behind in this recovery. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Representative Barbara Murphy.
Thank you, Lynn. I am Barbara Murphy. Good morning. And I serve Fairfax in the district titled Franklin 2. I'm also vice chair of the Franklin County delegation, which I've been promised isn't really a lot of work. I was reassigned to a new committee. I now am learning and serving on the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee. After serving on transportation for 6 years, it's quite exciting to be learning new aspects of our government process. We've had 13 bills assigned to the committee, 9 that we've already at least had an initial introduction to by their sponsor. Some have had more testimony and a great deal of committee attention. The education department has the new state law for providing health insurance for our school employees just went into effect 2 years ago, and truly is in its first year of being used and already needs some adjustments as things do. So there's some discussion and difference of opinion of what some of those changes should be. And those are reflected in 2 bills that we are trying to juggle and paste into one that will assist that process to continue forward. We're also doing a great deal of work with the homeless and housing focus, as Senator Brock spoke to, and looking at how the CRF and CARES money was spent on those areas of need in our society communities, and hoping to continue to keep people under safe cover and get people housed and in homes. Going to that, we're looking at the rental assistance and eviction moratorium and how, again, we can keep going forward with keeping people able to maintain their housing. We're looking at the basic needs budget and livable wage. And we also did a review of those pieces of the Budget Adjustment Act that we had oversight or opinions to give on, and did feel that the final look at that was what we could agree to and support in recommendation to the Appropriations Committee. So it's a whole lot of different work every day, very different from being on transportation, where there was a more lasered focus on one aspect of people's needs. So great to be here this morning.
Okay, Felicia Leffler from Innisburg, please.
Good morning, Representative Felicia Leffler. Going into my second term, I've been reassigned to a different committee. Well, reassigned, it's early. I've been assigned to a new committee. I'll be serving on judiciary for this term. Coming from corrections and institutions, there's a lot of overlap, particularly with the Justice Reinvestment Bill that we worked quite a bit on last session to kind of get past. We'll start getting reports back on that and being able to judge what our next steps should be. So I expect that to take up quite a bit of our time. This session, we've also started right into 2 bills, H18 and H20. H20 is looking at the use of some screening assessments in pretrial services and who should be able to access those, ideally expanding it to juveniles should they need be. We're having quite a bit of discussion around that. And H18 is just updating what is seen as child pornography under the law, so that we can kind of sweep in some of the tech advancements that allow for something to appear as what it is not. And I expect we'll be doing quite a bit of work in this committee. We've also been reviewing some of the CRF dollars that went to the judiciary and the impact of COVID onto the courts. Probably one of the biggest issues that we are facing is that we're seeing testimony come in already that because of the backlog, due to the courts being closed down or just operating much more slowly right now, if somebody wanted to take a case to trial, they could be looking at 5 to 6 years. So we will definitely be addressing how to take care of the court backlog and make sure that justice is served most appropriately. but it's going to be quite a bit of work, and I'm excited to get to learn the other aspect of corrections that I was working on previously, and more about the judicial system. I think that's just about all I've got.
Thank you, Senator Parent.
Thanks, Lynn. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I have a childcare drop off at 7:30, so ran right to my office after that. But this session, I'm serving on Senate Agriculture, which makes sense. Franklin County is the largest dairy county in New England, so it's good to have representation there for us from an economic development perspective. We're really just starting to analyze, some of the COVID dollars that went out in the last couple months. Particularly, we put a cap on benefits, so we didn't give out all of our COVID dollars, but we had oversubscription needs, so potentially looking to adjust those. I'm also on the Senate Institutions Committee, which deals with the capital bill. But that starts in the House, so a lot of our work will be in the second half of the year when that comes over. But we're just kind of just breaking into some testimony on various things that impact the state's bonding capacity, including we've got the report from the treasurer on teacher and state employee pensions. So we won't have much say there, but we'll be analyzing what it means from a bonding perspective. But that's where I am. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I think that's all the legislatives we have here. We have several who cannot make it, 2 or 3. Yes, Casey.
I think Paul Martin jumped on.
Paul Martin. Okay, Paul, if you're here, please introduce yourself. And there you are. Paul is here. Go ahead, Paul.
Good morning. Yes, I jumped on a little bit late too. So I kind of missed the intros. I just heard Casey's. What exactly are we looking for? Just like the committee we're on? And
just introduce yourself, do a brief explanation of your committee, what town you represent.
Sure.
Towns. So,
Paul Martin, I represent the towns of Richford, Franklin, Berkshire, and Highgate. I'm on the House Economic Development Committee with Lynn. We've been taking testimony really since the beginning of the session. We've worked on, I think, really one bill so far. So we haven't done a whole lot, but we are, I think, prepping to do a lot. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm not sure that this is, there's a real wide range of people who are tuned into us today, and that's really a good thing. But one of the things that we have discovered in the course of our listening to people talk about the coronavirus relief funds and the different programs that were run through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and with the tax department and all the grants. And I believe other people on the delegation can talk about this as well, is the lack of financial literacy among small businesses particularly, or people who are sole proprietor, independent contractors, very small businesses, people who really don't know how to put together through QuickBooks or anything like that, who are trying to, it could be restaurant owners, it could be just a small business. As we all know, the hospitality industry was really hit hard by COVID. But there's a lot of financial literacy. There's a lack of financial literacy that if anyone here has any suggestions on that, that is something that has emerged as one of the major issues for people applying for grants, whether it be, whatever sector of the economy you're talking about, including agriculture. Does anyone else have any big issues? I know that the agriculture community had a huge issue with that as well. And when Senator Parent talks about oversubscription requests, there were only was so much money available that was granted by legislation, but they weren't able to give it all out because there weren't people who had the amount of financial wherewithal to go and understand how to apply or how to get that information to the agency. Any questions on any of that or any other questions? Go ahead, Marilyn. You're muted, Marilyn.
Yeah, I know. The thing that I'm very, very concerned about, would like to hear from whoever's involved in this, is this whole thing on teacher and state employee retirement. I've seen it several times on the news, and it's not clear as to what's actually going on. And
Yeah.
I'd like to know.
Yes.
Retirements than expected because of the COVID, and teachers are really facing just an enormously challenging environment. And my daughter's a third grader at St. Albans City School. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the way that the school and the teachers in that community have stepped up. And so this couldn't be a worse time to scare these professionals about their retirement. So the treasurer, in response to this, put out a report, I think it was a week ago, Friday, that had, some suggestions about how to maintain the pension fund, how to keep it solvent. And we're taking those suggestions from the treasurer really seriously. But at this point, no decisions have been made about how exactly to address the increased gap between the liabilities and the funding and the pensions. So we're going to take a real deep dive and say, is that actuarial reevaluation, is it, should the number really be 7.2% instead of 7.5? How much more money do we need to ask teachers or the state to put into those funds? And are there changes like the treasurer had suggested where we change some of the terms for not existing retirees, but retirees in the future, so that the cost of living increases that they get aren't as substantial or phase out. So that's kind of all the top level stuff that I know right now, but no decision has been made. But Treasurer Pierce tried to tell us, hey, the writing's on the wall, we need to do something about this. And Speaker Koinski's made it very clear that the relevant committees, including mine, government operations, and of course all of the financial committees in the House and the Senate, are going to be looking at beginning to address these pension shortfalls in the out years. But in none, I want to reassure people that in none of what Treasurer Pierce suggested was there getting rid of the defined benefit plans or making changes for current retirees. And so there's been a lot of misinformation, especially online, that I think has added to the anxiety. And it's a really serious situation, and we are going to have to make changes, no doubt. But some of the things I've been reading are just not correct. And so I really encourage you, to contact your legislator or Treasurer Pierce's office and really read the report that she put out if you have questions about it.
Yeah, that's really been the problem. Even the news broadcast on CBS, when Beth was on it, it sounded as if there weren't going to be any more pensions for teachers, and that they were going to be cutting state employees. And I've just seen a bunch of stuff, like you said, Mike, and I would have called you over the weekend, or one of you over the weekend, but decided I'd just see you here tomorrow, and it'd be good for other people to hear about it. So I mean, basically, my whole opinion on this is, if for some reason they have to cut and I hope they're not going to cut obviously the current retirees, but this whole COVID thing, and that absolutely is a real reason why so many more people have jumped into jumped into retirement, that I would hope that there would be some COVID relief for retirees, or you're going to have the older people in a real mess, especially the people older than I am that have been retired for years, that perhaps are just living on their Social Security, and their teachers are retirement. So anyway, thank you, Mike. Appreciate the update.
Barbara, I think you had your hand up.
I did, Lynn, but Mike really very beautifully covered it, and I was not looking at the retirement piece. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, Marilyn, you've been around a long time in education, and you probably remember some of these things. Back in the 90s, when I sat on a school board here locally, Howard Dean, when the stock market was going crazy, it was doing really well, he decided not to put money into the teachers' retirement fund from the state like they normally had. And that went on for a few years, and that's part of the, it just lost the real miracle of compound interest and earning money while that was not being invested on a regular basis. And that's part of it. The other issue, and I don't know when this exactly happened, but the health insurance, what they call the OPEB, the benefits after you retire, the health insurance mostly for the teachers, does not have a separate fund. The Vermont state employees have a separate fund for their health insurance post-retirement. The teachers do not. So subsequently, when they paid the insurance, the health insurance for retired teachers, it came right out of the pension fund. And that was not a good thing to do, you know. And I think that we did this a couple of years ago. We tried to correct that in the legislature. We also have a plan now that we've had for the past maybe 3 or 4 years to try to catch up. And it goes out 30 years. I mean, it's not something you can do immediately, but it has increased allocations to the pension funds from the general fund so that we actually will eventually catch up. The problem is that we did have a lot of teachers who retired because of COVID. And so that put pressure again on the teachers and probably some on the state employees. And we have an aging population, so obviously we have more and more people who are going to be on the pension system. There's a guy named David Coates, who's an accountant out of Burlington, who's been talking about this probably for 20 years. He actually spoke to the legislature one year in a caucus of the whole about the dangers of this, maybe about 10 years ago or so. So this is something that people in state government have been aware of and legislators have been aware of, but it really was only like in the past 4 or 5 years that they finally stepped up to the plate and actually started to work on a plan to solve it and to put money into it. But it's a serious issue all the way around.
Oh, it is, yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously you've got an obligation. You've made obligations to lots of people who are expecting to retire, making plans based on that. And, you know, the legislature probably fell down on the job. And maybe the governors did. You know, it's just a difficult situation.
Yeah, well, I can remember, and I might be remembering wrong, but somehow along the way, I thought there was some money that was either to go to education that came out of the general fund that went to AOT, or they actually took money from the teachers' pension fund, which I don't think they could do actually.
I don't think they could.
Yeah, AOT, but I can remember some of that going on too. I don't know if any of you were around when that was happening. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, maybe there was something to do with, I don't know, maybe Brian, you can talk about that. There was something to do with transportation that was it the school busing or?
I'm sorry, I'm having problems unmuting myself. Okay, here we go. Yeah, well, over the course of many years, the transportation fund was actually raided, for lack of a better term, of funds that went into education and possibly other departments, including the Department of Public Safety to pay the state police. Was called JTOG money, and we still make a contribution to the state police out of the transportation fund. However, it's more realistic because there was a study done, and that's to compensate the state police for the patrol of the highways. So that's why the transportation fund is not where it should be, and why a lot of projects over the course of years, and I'm talking 25, maybe 30 years, the roads and bridges and things of that nature and other areas were basically let go because of the lack of the funding. So that is a little bit I know, and I got that from prior members of the body, as well as prior people who've sat on the transportation committee, as I said, in the last 25 or 30 years. There is a lot of disinformation being out there. I've had some teachers and former teachers contact me somehow, and this happened a few years ago when it was being talked about. I was invited to speak at a luncheon meeting of the Retired County Teachers Committee. Who invited me was my first grade teacher. And so I certainly went to it. This was a number of years ago. I think I was like in my first or second term. And they had gotten information that their benefits would be cut, if not taken away by the state. And that simply is not true. It wasn't true then. I have not heard on underwriters and the rating agents affect our bond ratings going forward.
Yes, good morning, everybody. there is no help coming from the state as far as a streamlined application process. I know that in some instances, banks have been helping people fill out application, but so what you're telling us is that
the issue is that people who have not had sophisticated or who are not, and there's several organizations that help with women's businesses. You know, there's a whole alphabet soup of them. There's several of them, technical assistants. Most women and minorities are very small businesses, one-person businesses, sole proprietor, and they of color normally don't have business organizations and organizations like the Chamber or the Vermont Social Responsibility. The farmers have their groups that they can turn to, but it's people who are just working out of their home or in very small businesses, working business to get access to some of that support. And people are really too busy working in their business to work away to go and spend a couple of hours or more working with people. Sometimes takes away from the work issue. It's out there, and to those nonprofits, some of the money went to those nonprofits.
We did fund VHCB, so going to be making some of these standards tougher. So income verification.
The number one enrollee was, of course, Community College of Vermont. Vermont Tech and Northern Vermont University had large numbers of students as well, and they had served almost 1,000 students for a very short-term, quick thing to help people take courses that would give them better skills to change careers or to upscale their experiences and their credits for their existing careers. For instance, a waitress might take bookkeeping or something like that. But this was apparently a very popular and very successful program. The other thing, and this was something the McClure Foundation did, is it gave every graduating senior from high school a free course at CCV for the fall semester, where they also hooked into all of their advising and their counseling and a whole bunch of other resources that CCV provides. But that's the kind of thing that was done. It was only $2.3 million, but probably per capita, that was really one of the better things that we did to reach those people you're talking about, Marilyn. And we're talking about how we do that and continue that again.
Yeah, I guess.
And those women and minority grants were also geared toward a lot of these same populations. And the same thing with the micro business, which is run out of Human Services. So there was given to those things and for any financial aid. Mm-hmm. All of the big hotels, all of the ski resorts that have, they employ about 1,000 people each, and those people couldn't get any federal money because they made more money than the cap allowed.
Yeah, no,
those
are really great programs, and I do know people did take advantage of it, and I did know about the number of 1,000 people in the McClure Foundation. But I'm just thinking about those people that don't know where to go and how to do it. Where do they, or even the employment people? I don't think people know how to use unemployment well. And maybe I'm digging too deep, but there's a lot of people out there that just don't know where they're going or what they're going to do. So is there going to be any additional resources and money out there for people like this that perhaps we could start directing people to?
Well, one of the problems with the UI system is that, and I think everybody knows this that's been in the legislature because they all tried to help out. There was a huge group of people who helped deal with the issues. They were totally flooded. I mean, when they normally get 4,000 people in a month, they had like 85,000 people. I mean, it was crazy. It was insane.
Well, that's good to hear that people were reaching out to try to get help.
Oh, yeah. But I know people, in our office who had to spend all day 600 phone calls to get through to the Department of Labor, to the UI system. They hired contractors. They still have contractors in there.
Yeah.
But it was not designed for that kind of a volume, and it was just overwhelming. And I know some of the members of the legislature helped out with that.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle.
I'd like to switch the conversation to vaccination a little bit. I'm a board member of Notch, and as a federally qualified health center, we are able, willing, and ready to help with the vaccination. I like to know the level of involvement that our legislators have in any of it. It seems like the governor has definitely the driver's seat on that, but is the legislature involved at all into the vaccination process, into this designation of where the vaccine goes? I mean, rural environment, which is what Notch serves, is definitely being questioned as far as when are we going to get vaccine and how much of it are we going to get. So I'm just wondering if you guys are involved into it, and if so, could you give us some news about it?
Then could I jump in
Sure,
on
go
that?
ahead, Mike. Well, Randy had his hand up first, but is this directed to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Michelle, it's a really great question. I mean, all of us are anxious to see the vaccination campaign roll out successfully. And we know that there's been an enormous amount of uncertainty about when the volume of vaccines will come in, and the uncertainty and the way that the federal management of that has rolled out has really made it so that, you know, when we had our caucuses last week, it was very clear from the chairs of the House Human Services and Healthcare that we in the legislature cannot act like we're the Department of Health. You know, we as citizen legislators need to leave the rollout of the vaccines to the health experts and go by the science and the policy, and that those people are in the Department of Health. And we've been asked, certainly, I mean, I have constituents in various different, you know, professions that consider themselves frontline workers that are frustrated with the age banding decision that the governor and the Department of Health made. But I think it would be really dangerous for us as legislators to try to step in at this point and direct that. But at the same time, you know, our role is to, you know, listen to what they're doing, make sure they are following the science, and to provide feedback from our constituents. And if folks have specific feedback, you know, we're happy to pass that along. I'm really cognizant that if we bring politics into what should be a data-driven, expert-driven rollout of who gets the vaccines and how they're distributed, it could lead to real problems and a lack of trust in the state government. So I think the legislators have all been trying to watch and understand and communicate good information, but we're just being very cautious about trying to step in and create confusion around the vaccine rollout.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Randy Brock and then KVNs.
Just to respond to that last question, I'm in full agreement that, you know, Vermont has the lowest COVID infection rate in the nation, the lowest death rate per capita in the nation. If we want to screw it up, get the legislature involved in trying to micromanage it. I think we are following the science, and I think we should continue doing what we do. I think we should pass on as legislators to the department and to the administration what we hear from our constituents. But otherwise, I think it's noses in and fingers out. I would like to also go back, though, to the earlier question of how do people know what's going on, what resources are available, and how to use them. The easiest reference is to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, ACCD's website. And right on their lead page is a resources for individuals. And it includes a listing of those resources and also an excellent Q&A so that people can understand where they go to find information about particular issues, ranging from eviction to help with housing to financial issues, direction to the Department of Labor to deal with the labor issues. And that website has, again, a great deal of information that answers questions. So that's the first place that I would direct people to. I do think, though, as Marilyn suggested, it might be an excellent idea to suggest to ACCD to add another section to their page about those resources ranging from OEO to other private organizations that could provide counseling or other assistance, so that again there's an addition to that central location to provide help. And I'll make that recommendation to ACCD.
Thank you. Kay Viens.
Hi, Kelly Viens at the St. Albans Recreation Department. And I just wanted to echo Dave Southwick's, comments on it. You shoot an email, you get an answer right back. I know everyone hears when there's a problem, but amazing. And we got answers immediately. And I would also like to thank Randy and Mike for acknowledging that our Department of Health has done it to them. I don't think any of us need, everyone wants the vaccine. I don't think any of us need to be messed up in it. Let them roll it out.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, Reg Beliveau.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Just the work that Senator Brock has been doing, and I appreciate that all the work that you folks do. The Notch has contacted us locally, so we are working with the Notch right now, and we should be scheduling some vaccinations very soon. So I know they're working with Richford as well. We should be having something in Swanton shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question of Kelly and one of the issues that we had was the issue of Better Spaces that did get a little bit of money at the very end. Is this something that the municipalities, I mean, actually anyone else from the town, I know Jessica's here, anyone else that has an issue about Reg Beliveau, anything about municipal help with the coronavirus relief fund money?
This is Dave. I'll just quickly, I think that